What happens when a battle-tested war hero stares down the defense secretary and says, point blank, "You broke the law"? Today, Senator Tammy Duckworth unleashes one of her fiercest warnings yet, one powerful enough to rattle Washington and potentially upend the entire Caribbean strike scandal.
Secretary Hegseth defended his actions again yesterday. He compared the operation in the Caribbean to the fight against terrorism in Iraq and Afghanistan. Listen to what he said.
What people think is cavalier or cowboy about it is the exact opposite. These are the most professional Americans going through specific processes about what they can and cannot do, understanding all the authorities, all the laws of war, all the capabilities, and applying it to deter our adversaries. The catch and release program of the pat them on the head and release them so they can go back to the fight didn't work in Iraq and Afghanistan, and it's not going to work in the Caribbean.
Like Secretary Hegseth, as I mentioned, you are an Iraq War veteran. What's your reaction?
Well, there was actually a vote by Congress to put us at war in Iraq and Afghanistan. There was no such vote. There was no such debate here in this situation. So the fact that we do have professionals, our military men and women are the utmost professionals. The problem is they've not been authorized to be at war. And by the way, the individuals in that vote were not even aimed at the United States. So everything that they've done has been illegal. It's illegal under international law. It's illegal under the Geneva Convention. And it certainly is even illegal under domestic law. It was essentially murder with that double tap strike.
I mean, that's a very strong statement. Murder. Does that constitute a war crime? Is that what you're saying?
It is a war crime. It's illegal. However you put it, it's all illegal. Look, Dan, I've been shot down behind enemy lines. Under the laws of war, if a pilot bails out, he gets shot down, he bails out, he's in a rubber dinghy in the middle of the ocean. Under all the international laws of warfare, you are supposed to help render aid to that individual. Even if they have a radio and they're calling for their side to come pick them up, you're not allowed to go back in and kill them. Even if you know that they're going to conduct future operations against you. That's the Geneva Convention. And so everything that they did here was illegal. In fact, the two survivors were clinging to half of a boat in the middle of the ocean and had no access to a radio per the Admiral briefing. And so, yes, all of it's been, the whole operation is illegal to begin with.
Senator, have you seen the video?
I have seen the video. And it is deeply disturbing. I am mostly concerned with the fact that we are putting our American servicemen and women in jeopardy here. We're putting them in jeopardy in case they ever get shot down. We're putting them in legal jeopardy. They could be brought up in international criminal courts. And so what we're doing here is taking those professionals, or utmost professionals, and putting them into harm's way. And that's what bothers me the most about what Pete Hegseth is doing. He is the least qualified Secretary of Defense in our nation's history, and he's very cavalier about doing things. Fact of the matter is, only Congress can decide that we can go to war, and there was no such declaration made.
I just want to make sure that that I get this accurate. You have seen the classified video of this particular strike, the first strike, and then the double tap, as it's known.
No, I've just seen what's been available in the media.
Okay.
I've read the full report, but I've not seen the actual video. I've requested to be able to see the actual video. I've also been actually asked to see the after action reports from the pilots and the drone operators, as well as the intelligence debrief that all pilots and drone operators conduct after they have completed a mission.
Senator, you said at the beginning of this conversation that you don't even know if this boat was headed to the U.S. What makes you say that?
Well, the admiral who briefed Congress said that, and quite a few of the previous boat strikes, from what I've read, also were not all of them were headed towards the United States.
Senator, go ahead.
Look, if they really cared about drug traffickers, the president wouldn't be pardoning drug traffickers. They would be putting money towards law enforcement. So let's go after the drug traffickers, but let's not be committing international war crimes and internationally illegal actions to do it.
Can I just ask, just on the war crimes in the video, if you read the report, you haven't seen the video, what makes you so sure that this is murder and a war crime?
You had two survivors clinging to half of a boat, and then you went in and you killed them. That's a war crime.
Yeah. On the issue of the video, the President of the United States said this week that he had no problem releasing it. And yesterday, Secretary Hegseth didn't commit to that. He said, like, it's possible that we can't release it because we need to protect sources and methods. Does he have a point there?
No, he doesn't. Not at all. He could certainly release it to the members of Congress. We all have the top secret clearances, and we are, unlike him, unlikely to put things out on signal. And so we should have access to it. And in fact, the Democratic members of the Armed Services Committee have requested access to all of the video footage, not just the one in this particular boat strike.
I do want to ask you about a separate issue, and that is that the House Speaker reportedly is working on stripping in vitro fertilization coverage from active duty service members. Now, you wrote President Trump, and you gave him an annotated letter urging him to stop Johnson. You warned him that Speaker Johnson wants to become the deadbeat dad of IVF, a nod, of course, to Donald Trump's declaration that he's the father of IVF. You've been really public about your own struggles with infertility. I know this is personal to you.
Well, it is. It's also personal to me because I saw so many of my comrades who were recovering at Walter Reed and other military medical centers who lost their fertility as a result of their military service. And I also, having worked in veterans issues for a long time, know that veterans suffer from much higher rates of infertility than the average population. And many women in the military would like to freeze their eggs prior to being deployed to a combat zone. By the way, Dana, this passed unanimously out of the House Armed Services Committee last year. It passed by a roll call vote out of the Senate committee. This year, it passed again out of the House, out of the Senate committee. The committees in both chambers support this. There's nobody opposing this other than Speaker Johnson and his religious views, because if you believe that a fertilized egg is a human being, has personhood, then some of the processes within IVF is considered murder. And so he's stripping away something that a bipartisan groups in Congress have said, you know what, we want our military men and women and their families to be able to have access to IVF. And by the way, the President of the United States said, and he promised on the campaign trail, to make IVF available to all Americans. And I can't think of a better place to make it available than the men and women who wear the uniform of this great nation.
What happens when a decorated combat veteran looks the Secretary of Defense in the eye and says, "What you did was illegal"? That's exactly what played out today, and Senator Tammy Duckworth didn't whisper it. She delivered one of the sharpest, highest-stakes warnings yet, and it could completely reshape the Caribbean strike scandal. The controversy centers on a deadly military operation in the Caribbean, one that many in the administration have tried to justify by comparing it to counter-terror missions in Iraq and Afghanistan. Secretary Hegseth doubled down again yesterday, saying these weren't reckless actions, but careful operations carried out by the most professional Americans, following rules, laws, and processes. He even framed past approaches as too soft a catch-and-release strategy and insisted the same logic that applied in Iraq and Afghanistan applies in the Caribbean. But here's where things get explosive. Senator Tammy Duckworth isn't just a senator, she's a combat veteran. She's someone who was shot down behind enemy lines and lived to tell the story because the rules of war protected her. And today, she made it clear she believes those rules were violated badly. Her reaction was immediate and blunt. There was no authorization for war. There was no congressional vote. There was no legal basis for a strike, let alone a second, double-tap strike on people stranded at sea. She explains that even in real wartime with authorization, with clear enemies, under real threat, there are hard lines you never cross. For example, if a pilot ejects and is floating in the ocean, you're required under the Geneva Conventions to render aid, even if they're calling for reinforcements on their radio. That's how strict those rules are. And according to the briefing she received, the two survivors targeted in the second strike weren't armed, weren't attacking, weren't even heading toward the United States. They were clinging to half a broken boat in open water. Duckworth didn't sugarcoat it. She called it what she believes it was: illegal under domestic law, illegal under international law, illegal under the Geneva Conventions, and yes, in her words, a war crime. And she didn't stop there. She warned that by ordering an unauthorized strike, the Secretary of Defense may have put American service members in legal jeopardy. She argues that U.S. pilots and drone operators could now be exposed to international criminal prosecution, something that has never been a casual risk for U.S. forces. Precisely because America normally follows the laws of war. She's especially alarmed that this mission lacked the most basic ingredient: congressional approval. At least in Iraq and Afghanistan, whether you agreed with those wars or not, Congress held a vote. There was a legal framework. Here, There was none. Duckworth also revealed that despite reading the report, she has not been allowed to see the classified video of the strike, even though the president publicly said he supported releasing it. She says Congress, which holds top-secret clearance, has every right to review it. Then she cut through one of the administration's main talking points, the idea that these boats posed imminent threats. Duckworth says briefings from military officials contradict that claim, and some of these boats weren't headed toward the U.S. at all. She even pointed out that if drug traffickers were truly the concern, the president wouldn't be pardoning people convicted of drug trafficking. And just when you think she's done, she pivots to another issue: IVF access for military families. As someone who struggled with infertility herself, Duckworth calls out efforts in Congress to strip IVF coverage from service members. She argues it harms military families, especially those who suffered injuries that affected fertility. But the biggest takeaway from her entire interview? This wasn't just political theater. This was a combat veteran issuing a warning she believes is about the rule of law, the safety of American troops, and the moral credibility of the United States. Her message is simple and powerful. If America abandons the laws of war, we put our own forces at risk, we lose our moral high ground, and we cross lines that can't be easily uncrossed. And she wants the classified video released. She wants the after-action reports. She wants transparency. And she wants accountability. Because for her, this isn't about scoring points. It's about preventing irreversible damage to American service members and to the country's integrity on the world stage.